Dupe, episode 5.
Hello and welcome to Dupe, the movie pitching podcast with a twist, where we all get the same title, some time to prepare, and then everybody pitches their idea at the table, and we help mould and workshop it together. One of us, however, hasn't had the title in advance, and that is our dupe today, Ryan. Ryan, how are you feeling?
I'm really good, yeah. Ryan Scott, your favourite dupe whose pictures aren't poop.
Is that your...
Yeah.
You're trying to make that hashtag, are you?
I'm going to put it into a t-shirt at some point.
Yeah, I think you should.
Wow.
Those t-shirts are available on at no good retailers. And our other two guests with us today are Dan. Dan, how you doing?
I'm really well, thanks, and I do not have a pithy intro.
That's probably for the best. And Sam, we have Sam with us. Sam, you're one of our first lockdown guests. How do you feel about that?
I'm thrilled. I'm nervous, but also thrilled. I mean, it's great to have something to do. That's always a plus. Something to work towards. But I feel like the whole idea of doing a podcast lends itself really well to like the lockdown situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So it's been fun, and I have to admit, having listened to a few of the previous ones, I was like, oh my God, I don't know whether I'm going to do enough prep. Maybe I'll just see if I can improv my way through this. I've probably done more prep than I've done for like a lot of my schoolwork for this.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean,
impressed.
Who knows what'll happen.
Well, you and me, Sam. You and me
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. We all know Dan puts a lot of prep work in, don't you, Dan?
All the time. Every time.
And I'm Sean, your peerless moderator, who will be picking a winner at the end of the episode. And what happens to the winner? Well, you're going to have to stick around to the halfway point to find out.
What was that little quip about yourself?
What, the peerless moderator? I guess
moderator.
maybe we do have a couple of quips going on in this.
I'm going to have to come up with one now, aren't I?
You have to.
Suitably unprepared or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know.
Yes. So without further ado, our title for today is A Stitch in Time. That's A Stitch in Time. And I believe, Sam, you've probably got the most notes, so that probably puts you in a position to be the first to give us your answer.
Let's see. It's one of these things where I've got a lot written in front of me, and then maybe I'm going to just sum it up in a sentence, and then we'll just stare at each other for the rest of the time. But okay, so I will start. So, A Stitch in Time, or its original title, Jikan no Sutechi, is the latest animated feature from Studio Ghibli. I mean, I sort of, to make up for my lack of film knowledge, right, I have essentially made up for that in my ability to write a plot. So I have like a loose skeletal plot line here that I'm just going to throw at you and see how long your attention manages to survive for that. But
that's perfect, because we do the reverse normally. We have a nice deep knowledge of film, but absolutely no idea of what happens within the plot.
And I round the group out by having neither, so it's great.
And this is our first animated pitch.
I believe it is.
So a little bit more pressure for you there.
It's not our first animated pitch, no.
Oh, is it not?
I'm going to throw back to the horror when we had the anime Death Train.
Oh God, yeah, but that was my idea and it was terrible. So it's our first good animated.
well, that remains to be seen, I have to add. But I realised that I've also thrown myself a bit of, or shot myself in the foot in some respects, because I realised that if ever this would, I mean, this is going to be a hard one for a trailer to be made of. Let's face it. But I would be impressed if it could. But anyway, it begins. In the introductory shots, we have a narrator, and it's introducing us to the town of Little Stitchings, which is a fictional town in a sort of industrial revolution England, in the north of England. And we're focusing in on the happy birth of Fenella Cloth, who is the daughter of a lowly tailor. And there's a sort of, it's a musical, by the way. This is studio.
Brilliant.
That was a necessary addition at this point.
Our first musical.
Is it the first musical? Perfect.
Yeah, it
perfect.
is.
So we have this big like opening number. I'm thinking like kind of Corpse Bride type sweepings, Danny Elfman style score, in which we see Fenella Cloth growing up in this little town and develop a special bond with her grandma Edith, who is always knitting. But Fenella never knows what she's knitting. It's always a little bit of a secret, but she copies her grandma and she tries to pick up the skills. The father, Martin Cloth, begins to struggle after, and we see this all in a kind of montage type thing, after the building of Bumble Bunch Factory is taking all of his work.
Oh, no.
No.
It's too traumatic, guys. So we have that opening number, and we join Fenella as her and her family gather around the bed, and it's Grandma Edith's deathbed. Grandma Edith turns to young Fenella and she says that she's destined for great things. And with that, she passes away. No better start to a happy animated film than having death, I feel. And that night, she wakes. We see her sort of waking, and we see a rattling in the wardrobe, and an avatar of Edith, entirely made out of Fenella's clothes, bursts out and tells Fenella the secret of what she really was. She was a weaver. She had the duty of weaving the fabric of time.
Yes.
But, hence this title, she was unable to complete her fabric because Bumble Bunch Factory monopolized all the imports of thread.
No.
So the quest is that she sets Fenella is to complete her fabric before it's too late. Initially, Fenella doubts herself. This is too big for her. A self-reflecting song here, preferably. And the factory gave her nightmares as a child. But with some encouragement from her nervous friend, Bobbin, she agrees to do it. Then we have a sort of Mission Impossible style break-in where her and Bobbin kind of break into the factory and try and get some thread back. But as this is happening, Fenella realizes that the world about her break-in actually becomes really easy because the world about her is slowing down. Everybody around her is just suddenly becoming really slow. And she realizes when she gets home, the fabric of time is becoming unwoven around her until when she gets back home, she realizes that everybody's frozen. So now she has to learn to knit and learn to do it in order to get time sort of back up and running again. There's essentially what I've got then is a series of plot points after that. The only thing I haven't got is an ending. That's the only thing I've yet to settle on. But there is a twist as well. So she practices her knitting. But as she's practicing, she notices a gold light outside the window, and she follows it to this small clearing by a lake where it forms into a gold effigy, kind of gold of people from the past. And this happens every night. So she's in the day, she's working on her stitching, and every night she watches images of the past played out by these gold effigies. And it's here that she discovers a grave family secret, that Mr. Bumblebunch is in fact her father's brother.
Oh, no. Twist
alert. And the reason why that is because Edith chose Fenella. We see this played out in the gold sort of effigies. Since Edith chose Fenella to be the weaver instead of the uncle's son, Harold Cloth, aka Mr. Bumblebunch, turned his back on the family, even changing his name. And then Harold opened up his factory. But when he did, his son, Barty, contracts a terrible illness and dies. And Harold blames Edith for weaving this into her fabric on purpose.
Yeah, sure.
When in fact, there are some things beyond the weaver's control. So Edith wove Harold's free will into her tapestry, allowing him to build his factory, and his son's illness was a result of the inhalation of fumes from the factory. So it wasn't Edith's fault at all. But there's one final twist to this, and there's one final flashback that she sees through these gold effigies. And it is Fenella as a child playing with a younger sibling. And she sees the flashback of Mr. Bumblebunch kidnapping the younger child and stealing him away, which is why Fenella can't remember. She was too young to remember. And so we now have a situation where there are two weavers. There are two potential weavers who run in the family line. And the ending is Fenella going to confront this other weaver? Essentially, my thinking is that the reason why the fabric of time is sort of coming unraveled is because you have two weavers, one Mr. Bumblebunch's kidnapped brother, and the other being Fenella.
They're both
correct, exactly right. So that is as short as I can make a summary of the plot.
Short. It's beautiful.
Yes, but
it's glorious.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, and you're dealing with free will as well. Like quite a serious thing. It's
capitalism.
Like,
yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, this did start as a whimsical children's film, and it took me down quite a path.
You should. I mean, you heard how Ryan's Bob disposal started.
Yeah,
like, true. And then it ended up, quite tearjerking.
What I quite like about it is, at the beginning you mentioned sort of like the new film from Studio Ghibli. Those films don't shy away from sort of loss and from, family passing, and then sort of ideologies of capitalism, as we said, and sort of.
So I mean, if you imagine that this, exactly. So if you imagine that this film took place, let's say it was made a few years ago, you could still have Takahata, the director of such sort of like polarizing films as Grave of the Fireflies, right down at the end of the emotional scale, moving all the way up to Tale of Princess Kaguya or something, or Only Yesterday, which is like a very sort of like down-to-earth drama. So you have that whole scale, don't you? Of if unless you're thinking of it being a Miyazaki, a Goro Miyazaki, or a or a Hayao Miyazaki.
Again, here's where my complete lack of film knowledge and film directors comes in that I'm the sort of dunce that watches a film and goes, "Wow, that was great," and obsessive. I'm not very good at directors' names, but I think in my head I was like, "Oh, I want it to look like Howl's Moving Castle." So whoever directed that. Yeah. Probably that, but again, I will leave the directing side to your expertise. I think I'd be happy with
Can I throw a little, not spanner, a little add to the works? Is that I also had animated film idea as part of mine, which is great because I had like two paths for it to take, and one of them was animated. But I thought that I would do the animation in the style of Coraline, sort of the with stop motion bits. And I wondered whether this would really fit with stop motion cloth,
right?
And
so this
yarn and buttons.
This is so weird that you should say this, because I literally had this exact conversation with Maddie, my girlfriend, before this, and originally it was going to be Tim Burton. It was going to be a stop motion like Coraline or something like that, which is so weird that you should say that. And I went with Studio Ghibli just because, in a way, I think what Tim Burton does very well is has the darkness, the creepy darkness, sort of almost skeletal characters. Whereas upon reflection, I think that there was a warmth to this a little bit more. With the gold effigies and stuff like that. But you're so right in that was the other direction that it was going to go.
It could still have the same sort of love and warmth. I just like the texture. I like the sort of the feel of being able to, especially since all the names of the characters are so obviously material.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the Coraline bit at the beginning, isn't it, where he's weaving the Coraline puppet. Yeah, that's true. If I was making this film, I would be happy for it to be either.
Or something like a Kirby game. Do you know what I mean? Like those Kirby ones where everything's made of wool or whatever. A bit like that. Or what's the other computer game where you're a bit of yarn?
Yoshi's sort of Woolly World, or Unravel and stuff like that.
What's the one? Oh, what's the one me and Maddie were playing with the big puppet people? remember what it is. I'll come
Oh
back to
God,
that.
Puppeteer's pretty good as well. Puppeteer's pretty good.
Mm.
Tearaway has that sort of,
Tearaway.
and Dreams has that sort of tactile
Yeah.
feel to it, doesn't it?
Oh, Little Big Planet you're on about?
Little Big Planet.
Little
I mean,
Big
that is
Planet.
exactly what I'm on about.
What a classic.
Yeah, that's
What
brilliant.
a classic.
Um,
So I think a way of maybe figuring out how we want the art style to go down or the tone is maybe thinking of the audience age. So is this like a family film where adults can, like more of the Pixar sort of era and Ghibli where you can go, oh my God, that's for all ages? Or is it more of a kids film? Or is it more of an adult sort of film like a Coraline is definitely more of an adult's film?
Yeah, I think my initial thought was a family film. I think this is kind of in the sort of film that everybody could take something away from it,
Yeah.
And maybe if the film has a flaw, if we're going to go down that in the critical reception, maybe one of the feedback would be that it didn't know what it was doing. Is it dark? Is it
interesting?
One of those films where the adults all come away really liking it, but they're like, oh well, I'm not sure whether I'd take my kids to see that, or there's something like that. So maybe that would be a pitfall of the film. But I don't know.
I'm going to add to that because we watched Big Hero 6 the other day on Disney Plus. Sorry, that's a quick plug. Hopefully I'll get a 3-year subscription for that. But we were watching, we had to stop it because my little one, who's only just coming up to 4, found it too scary. And that was, I found that really interesting because it's sort of rated the same as, I think Frozen's even like 6+ it's rated at. And there's so many other Disney films that we watched that are 6+. But it was because it dealt with real things, I think. I don't want to spoil the plot for anyone that hasn't watched Big Hero 6, but because it's an authority figure, real people, he couldn't handle it and we had to stop it.
It was like a dynamic shift, wasn't it? And a sort of the duality of good and evil was something that he probably at 4 sort of hasn't ever come across, I suppose. Maybe you would imagine something like that.
I always admire the one film that I thought of when I was doing this initially, especially with like the opening scenes of like Grandma Edith's death and stuff, was Coco.
Absolutely, I was getting Coco vibes for sure.
That film, I mean, I am not ashamed to say that I wept at that film. And I feel like there's something masterful about doing a film that strikes that balance so well, in that being a kid's film, but also sort of encouraging children to think about like quite mature themes. Not mature, but like death and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And when you do that well, it's amazing. Like
almost every Disney movie has one of the parents dying or dead. Moana opens with the grandma's death. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there's so many. Bambi. I remember my dad saying he had to take my auntie out of the cinema because she was sobbing so heavily.
No, I can't watch that again.
It's such a present thing, isn't it? It's such a present thing in everybody's lives, isn't it? And it's sort of such a thing that we're also in unique and different ways. We're also still afraid of it, regardless of how, or we have an unusual relationship with it, regardless of how present it is in everyone's lives, and the objective sort of thing that everyone is going to have to face.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of fascinating how it works its way into sort of kids' films quite a lot.
I can't watch The Land Before Time. And I've told, and Maddie has never seen it before, and she's asked me on so many occasions, can we please watch this film? And I've just flatly said no. I have to be in the position. I have to be in a position to emotionally deal with that, and I don't think I ever will be. So she's just going to have to deal with the fact that she can't see that film.
You can watch it on her own, just to say that she can be an individual.
But then do you want her to be in the same state as you are in, Sam? Scarred for life? That's it.
If she's going to maybe. But if she's going to watch it, I need to know so I cannot be in the build. If I know it's on.
In the building.
Yeah, I need to leave and, I don't know, listen to, put loud thrash metal music on.
Some ska music. That always makes me happy.
Or watch the last half of A Stitch in Time.
Yes,
that's it. Yeah. So who are the voice actors for this?
Do you know what? I'm so glad you asked, because this is another thing I definitely prepared for. I'm going to handily turn over my page here, which is great for the people listening at home because they can't see what I'm doing. They might hear the rustling maybe. Okay, so there are a couple of ones that I was like one actor and that's it, and a couple where I had like I had up to 3 options. So for Nella, I was thinking Maisie Williams.
Yeah, good choice.
Sort of spunky. Is that a dated term? I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know.
I don't think it relates to what we imagine it relates to.
No, but you know what I mean.
It's okay to say something.
In terms of describing people.
Yeah. Let's go for energetic, yeah. Sprightly, passionate, ballsy, bit like
ballsy. Ballsy is more contentious, I think, than spunky.
I'm really
for sure.
finding it tough to steer away from these analogies. So yeah, something like that.
It's been a long lockdown.
It has been. No excuse. So Maisie Williams, I think she would be great. There's the narrator as well, and I don't know what you guys thought, but I mean, I was thinking that perhaps the narrator should be someone from the story, because that's always nice, isn't it? To realise that you're being told the story from the perspective of a character you've been seeing.
Should it be the grandma?
Sure.
Well, I was thinking it would be an older Fenella.
Interesting.
Telling the story again.
Nice.
And I was thinking...
You might think it's the grandma, for example, because they have similar voices, perhaps. Sometimes it skips a generation. People sound similar, don't they, to aunts and uncles?
I think that could be a good thing to have. I'd like that. And I was thinking Judi Dench would be a good one. I actually went for typically northern actors because I wanted to have a rural sense to it, like Northern English. And you don't really get that very much in like studio
in animation,
do you?
I agree with you totally.
Yeah. Olivia Colman could be a good one if you want a sort of slightly more northernish accent.
Do you know what? I wrote Julie Walters as the next one. A kind of really homely, you're being told the story by the fire.
The budget for this animation is extraordinary.
Yeah. Oh, I've not limited myself to budget as usual. That's why I write science fiction novels, because all I need is a laptop and my imagination. People try and persuade me, "Oh, Sam, you should turn this into a musical." I was like, "No, because then I have to think about what I'm going to pay people." And
yes, you have to involve other people. That's when it's terrible, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So Grandma Edith. Now, this is one I took a while to think of, and I landed on Jane Horrocks.
Yeah, great choice.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Purely from Chicken Run and
stuff.
But I am open to other suggestions for that.
Great shouts.
And then Fenella's father. Well, initially I said Sean Bean, right? Northern actor, that kind of thing. But I feel like he might be too almost like hardy and like weathered.
Yes, I totally get you.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think this could actually, I did have a thought of John Hurt, God rest his soul, if he was still alive, because of that frailty and that kind of. I'm trying to think of an example of sort of.
He has potential menace, doesn't he? Like in V for Vendetta, which I watched the other day, he has like quite a potential for menace.
Yeah.
But also he has a softer side if necessary. You can see him commanding a factory.
Yeah. Well, no. So the factory owner is his brother.
Oh, I see.
Sorry,
okay.
Yeah. I may not have explained that very well. So the idea is that it was him and his brother, and his brother is Mr. Bumblebunch, who owns the factory.
Yes,
and he was spited by. Well, he feels like he was spited by the family because his son wasn't chosen to be the weaver. It was Fenella. So that was probably my bad on a sense of that. So really, actually, you want somebody whimsical.
Eccleston?
Well, that's actually not bad. Yeah, because it's a bit more colourful, actually, isn't it?
Who is that? Who is that?
Christopher Eccleston.
Oh yeah, good choice. Yeah.
That is a good choice.
Gimli, Jonathan Rhys-Davies.
Another one?
Yeah, we've got Chuck Jonathan Rhys-Davies.
That's quite a big voice, though, isn't it? If you're trying to get away from Hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doubles down on the Hardy.
Brian Blessed just bulldozed your animated feature.
Well, if you're going for
he plays them all, doesn't he?
Maybe Northern baddies. What have you got for the baddie? What have you got for the uncle?
So I had quite a few of these. I had Patrick Stewart as the first one. And I had
really do have unlimited budget.
Yeah, I really do. Oh, I'm not. This is the thing. I could never be a producer. I'd be like, let's just get everyone in. Let's pay them whatever we want. I said Ben Kingsley as well.
Yeah.
Someone with a kind of booming authority. And the thing I like about Patrick Stewart is that he is kind of northern, but
Yeah, sure,
but
sure.
RSC trained, so they
Yeah,
him
yeah,
back in
absolutely.
whenever it was.
It'll be nice to hear it from his sort of rural accent. Yeah, I remember there's just this is a tangent, but there's a moment. Again, I don't want to be too spoilery, although it is an old show. But in the reimagining of Battlestar Galactica, there's quite a prim and proper character that has a moment where he slips back into his sort of rural farmland roots, and and that's his change in character, you know. And I sort of it's definitely a tangent, but that really
I remember
struck
that.
me.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think it could be quite powerful to hear.
Can
So,
I throw Ian
go on.
McShane in there?
Oh
Good
yes,
Good actor.
yes, that would be brilliant.
I
Is he the
I
one
saw
from
him.
American Gods?
Yes,
Yes.
he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
great shout.
I
He's
think I saw
fearsome.
him as the devil in The Witches of Eastwick in the West End.
Right.
So
Wow.
he'd totally fit for your musical idea as well.
That's true. That's true. I hadn't. Do you know what? I hadn't even given.
You got to think about then they got
Got to
the
think about
rhythm.
whether they can
Although-
sing. Although
all
I
the
have to
ones you
say,
named how.
it's
so
not really a prerequisite in Hollywood movie musicals, is it?
careful.
Not naming any.
So, speaking of musicals, unless of course you have a few more actors to give us, when you're done, I'd like to talk about the musical aspects of this.
Absolutely. I only had one more, and to be fair, I didn't really feature this character very heavily, but the mother of Fenella, who could probably serve as a driving force in some points, Maria, and well, if we're talking big budget, I'm saying Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah.
Little budget, I'm thinking Sophie Rundle. Well, actually, I feel like that's a bit of a stab at Sophie Rundle. She's great.
yeah.
I don't know why I'm not. That shouldn't be I think she's brilliant, but not as big a name maybe as Jodie Whittaker. But
not particularly now. Yeah.
do you know Sophie Rundle?
I'm googling her as we speak.
Please do. Yeah, she's great. What did I see her in recently? She was in the drama. Are we allowed to?
She was in Peaky Blinders and The Bodyguard.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And there was a Scottish drama on, I want to say BBC, about a surrogate mother. The Nest, it was called.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Which was very good.
Yeah, she could almost be like a surrogate as well if Maisie Williams says no, because I feel like she's got the voice that could sort of she could go youthful if she needed to, couldn't she?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then you could throw Saran Jones in as the mother.
Yeah. She's the other one from Gentleman Jack, isn't she?
I say throw Saran Jones in. That there's no doing that. That is a disservice.
Only with her consent, of course.
You have to. Yes, you have, and you have to pay her as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, the musical aspect I'm interested in. So, what's the musical style? You know, is it going to be sort of poppy numbers, like a Moana style thing, or some other musicals that have, like The Greatest Showman that have quite poppy numbers, or is it going to be very sort of austere and classical? Even Frozen has quite broad classical numbers in it. I know less about musicals than you guys do. I'm just trying to sound intelligent. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No. I think that's a good distinction to make. I think I imagine the first person that I imagine writing the music would be Tim Minchin, purely because, first of all, Tim Minchin writing a Studio Ghibli thing would be so out of this world. It would be awesome.
That's a dream.
And I
team,
feel like
isn't it?
I want there to be it's set in quite a sleepy, I suppose, in a way, town. So I want there to be a dynamic element to it, and a quirkiness as well. A bit like we would if we were to have the Tim Burton idea of it. A bit like a kind of quirky, very character-driven stuff, not pop. I don't think.
His Matilda and Groundhog Day are brilliant. So if that sort of style of stuff.
Yeah, and it's quite good as well. Like you say with Matilda, with I can really imagine him writing good children's songs,
kids stuff. Yeah.
Not necessarily children's songs that children like, as in songs that can be sung well by quote unquote children.
Interesting.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's playful and it's fun and probably could be a bit creepy as well. But I don't know whether creepy would be a bum steer. Maybe
only once or twice, or once and a half. You need a creepy number in there, don't you?
Yeah.
Just to scare away the really young children.
And one of the things I liked about Tim Minchin's stuff in Matilda is that he made the adults seem ridiculous. So Matilda was the sensible one, as the story is anyway, and the sort of the caricature of that. But he really got kids Like he didn't really talk down to children in his music either, and that the grown-ups were all a little bit gross, with the exception of Miss Honey. And I thought, and that's kind of because that's kind of a little bit like your, with the exception of the grandma, maybe. All the parents and the uncle are a little bit out of the world, aren't they? It's all about the kids,
especially Mr. Bumblebunch. It was a blessing, by the way, when I discovered that word, because it's a I didn't know, but it's a knitting term, or at least a sewing term.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's where the thread gets caught up in a big bunch essentially and ruins knitting. So I was like, that's amazing. And it sounds whimsical and quirky and great. Yeah, but exactly right. Like with, you want that element of like a bit Roald Dahl, isn't it? Like Roald Dahl was very good at and another thing to add as well, a bit like Studio Ghibli, he wasn't afraid to tell quite dark themes and to kill people off. You know, kill off the bad guys and throw them into
to really give you lessons, right? Lessons to learn from it. And so Quentin Blake has to do the poster then. I'm seeing the poster with Quentin Blake and some of the artwork. You know, maybe he does the Criterion re-release or whatever cover. You know, because we've got to have some Quentin Blake stuff in there.
Yeah. God.
Yeah. So what does the poster? What's the marketing? What's the marketing look like?
I mean,
what's the tagline?
So good that you said that, because now I get my chance to improvise, because I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. I'm thinking maybe you have a kind of, do you know those kind of posters where, and again, I'm really showing my lack of media knowledge here. I have an A-level in media. I don't know what I'm doing.
We all have an A-level.
Everybody's got an A-level in media. But you know, when you have those posters, particularly in the Star Wars films and in like Stranger Things, where you have each character kind of faded on top in a kind of tower of each character's face, and maybe a central figure like the factory, and people kind of, maybe that would be a good idea. But actually, I've just made that up on the spot. Don't know whether it's appropriate. Maybe you guys have a better idea.
You have you'd run some kind of like social media marketing where you give out the actual stitching plans. I don't think they're called plans.
Like a blueprint.
Pattern, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So you put out the patterns, and then people can basically be stitching stuff, create their own, and you know, you'd have that as a marketing leading up to it. So it'd be like, you get to go to the premiere if you make this coolest thing out of this pattern.
Yeah. And there's a great amount of sort of puns to do with threads and yarns, and you know, a yarn like you've never heard before.
Yes.
Thread.
That is great.
The thread between family is easily cut, or something like that. You know, like
the ties that bind us.
I was trying to think of a kind of tagline like that. Something about, because I mean, it's so weird. I can't remember what I was listening to the other day, that you have certain phrases that lend themselves very well to certain things, and fabric is always used with time. There's always that link, isn't there? Which is, I guess, maybe comes from Einstein and how he described like space-time and all that.
I reckon it's probably from before then, with weaving. Yeah. But they're like, sort of, everyone has their own thread, don't they? As you're your own thread, and we're all woven into a tapestry that that makes our lives and the world and stuff.
Yeah, God, that's good. But having something like that in a tagline would be great. Like weave your own tapestry or something, or playing with it. I quite like playing with the idea of God, I'm so great at forgetting words just when I need them. Of determinism. I don't know if that's been done in a family film before. Probably not, but I think that would be kind of cool to have.
So Dan, would you like to give us your idea for A Stitch in Time?
I would love to, Sean. I'd love to. So I had the very similar sort of idea of an animation for in the Coraline's way, but I decided I had a two-way option with this, and what I've got is The story plot is some kids are forced to go and stay with an auntie they don't know very well for the summer holidays while their parents work out the final stages of their divorce. And during the selling of the house and the turbulent time, they're forced to go and stay with an auntie they've never really met. And they're obviously not very happy about it. They go and stay with this auntie, and somehow they find out that she's really into embroidery. She makes those little circle embroideries, has them all over the house. And she has the power to travel through time to anything that she's stitched, any picture that she has stitched. So if she stitches like the Colosseum back in Rome, if you were to look at it and think about it, or maybe put the final stitch in, you're teleported into that place. And you can experience that and then come back out as long as you can unpick the stitch or something. I haven't quite worked out the... This is my second time travel that I don't know how to work out. They go and stay with this auntie, and it's a bit like Nanny McPhee and Mary Poppins thing. That's not quite sure about her to begin with, but the more they get there, the more they realise she's actually super cool. And I think somewhere along the line, because I think it's a teenage girl and a slightly younger boy. And the teenage girl eventually convinces the auntie to stitch an embroidery of their mum and dad at their wedding. And they or at the point
happiest.
when things started going, and remind them of what and like leak in so that they don't get divorced. So maybe there's a particular moment that they remember something went wrong. Maybe someone went away for a job or something, or so they stop them from going for that job, which saves it and everyone's happy, but it means that they never meet the auntie because they've rewritten the entire timeline.
Oh, God,
and then, which is fine because we're not going through linear timelines, but it means that they never meet the auntie, and actually because that happens, the auntie she now dies, she doesn't exist anymore, and so they never get the opportunity of having that auntie, but they do get the happy family.
Possibly have the moment, towards the end where together they learn how to embroider. Like you have this fake out, like the Iron Giant movie, where you think, oh, it's all over, my God. I mean, I cried like a baby at the Iron Giant movie. And you go, oh my God, it's over. But then you have just that moment that says, actually, the two of them together are stitching in the same style, the aunt and them hanging out together, in the possibility that maybe
that might happen, or that's their memory of her at the end.
Yeah, and there's no magic to it. It's just
and no one else really has a memory of this woman anymore because of the timeline that they've now.
That's weird. That's like the grandfather clock conundrum. Not grandfather clock, sorry, the grandfather conundrum. Like where if you go back in time and killed your grandfather, would you have to do it? Exactly, yeah. Would your grandfather die? But I like that because, well, in your instance, that is it forks off into a separate timeline in which there isn't that.
The
woman.
weave of time has been unpicked and repicked.
Yeah, I like that.
Actually, it's okay that that's happened.
Did you imagine it being like? Because I don't know why, but the second you went going away to stay with the grandparents, I thought wartime. Like Second World, like a kind of 5 Children in It kind of thing.
Railway Children, was that the other one?
Yeah, like that. Or has anyone seen 5 Children in It?
No.
There was a new film, an Eddie Izzard adaptation. Eddie Izzard played the Sand Fairy, I think it was called. But it was wartime, and they went away. And
I like that because wartime has quite a. It feels like stitching would be around then, and maybe the auntie is old enough to have experienced the war, but it feels like divorce and that kind of stuff that we have to is a far more modern occurrence. Like divorce during the war wasn't necessary. I'm happily to be recorrected on that, but it didn't feel like it was as. It would have been a really big deal back then, whereas now it's like a thing that happens.
Oh yeah,
that makes sense. And the ability to want to change that and have some agency over it as a child or a kid or a teenager feels a little bit more modern. But I like the idea of maybe there is some. Does that make it English rather than American? Because this feels chintzy enough to be American. Do you know what I mean? It feels really Mrs. Doubtfire kind of
That's interesting because I was feeling like it was quite Enid Blyton or quite sort of.
Okay.
Yeah,
so did I.
I was sort of having.
I'm
that
happy.
Sort
I'm
of
happy to
vibe.
go sort of back there, sort of famous five world type place.
That's what I thought. But to be fair, actually, when you said divorce, then in a way, I see what you mean in that that's slightly more relevant in the case. But then I suppose if you can choose also when this film was made, you could say that it was made at the time of like Railway Children and stuff like that. But then, or you could have.
I'm also happy for it to be back then, and because then the parents splitting up is a really, really, really big deal, and I guess it makes it less cheesy than the Americanized version that I initially imagined.
Nothing wrong with cheese.
The version I originally thought is somewhere between like Mrs. Doubtfire, Home Alone, those kind of American.
Right, yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like where it is, there's quite obviously a happy ending, whereas we could have it. They stitch in time. And they realize they go back to that moment to go and try and save their marriage, and they go and see the moment when their marriage start falling apart, and think actually maybe it's for the best that they're not like that. Maybe they do need that time.
Maybe it's post-war. So like you've had all of this happen, and maybe the aunt did some stitching or embroidery during the war, and there's that sort of she can talk to them about the war because they'd be just too young maybe just to comprehend what had happened. So you don't see a lot of films or a lot of media, especially with children in it, that deal with post-war, and I haven't really seen a lot of films that deal with direct post-war Europe either. Definitely during, definitely sort of the lead up, and perhaps it's just me, I haven't seen a lot of really good post-war films. So maybe you could have the children trying to understand divorce and also trying to understand the world state at the same time. And maybe there's some sort of,
And that might deal with post-traumatic stress disorder from coming back from the war. Maybe that's why they're not happy anymore, the parents. And maybe that leads them to trying, I don't know, maybe they're trying to go back and save their dad from being traumatized, that's horrific, really, trying to go back to that. But dealing with all those things, or finding ways of going back into the timeline of their parents to make him happier, so that he doesn't have those outbursts, maybe, or doesn't suffer those things.
Well, the one thing you would be dealing with if it was post-war was that the father would have almost certainly gone away. So he would probably be, and that, sorry, exactly what you say, like he could be dealing with post-traumatic stress.
And also dealing with the place of his wife in a new light, in post-war, the role of women had changed, the role of men had changed.
That's true.
Like a lot of the soldiers had nothing else after they went away as young men, and they came back not knowing what to do. They had no skills that were relevant anymore. So I mean, this has taken a much sort of darker turn than I'd originally said. I like it.
But it can still be cheesy, I guess. It can still be cheesy.
Would you make
I don't want it to be cheesy now. I think I like where it's gone.
Would you make it quite mystical, like the book of the Tree of Life? You know how that sort of had those connecting sort of worlds, and so you make it like as she's stitching, like she stitches a tank, so she embroiders like a tank, and then you take it into that time. We sort of have it where it's quite the sort of bright colours. Maybe even like when we're sort of looking at the embroidered pieces, it's sort of a mix between that sort of stitching and embroidery and real
and movement.
Yeah.
God, we're going Tree of Life. We're going Terrence Malick with this. We're making it like it's just suddenly jumped up to something else entirely.
It's got that kind of not to go down the fantasy side of Narnia, but it says with time travel. But it's not that. But it's that way of dealing with post-war with something that is slightly fantastical, so that the kids are able. That's their way of dealing with it. Do you know what I mean?
And can you imagine a desperate moment where someone is sort of maybe on their deathbed, or they realise that something's happening and they have to capture this moment, and they're stitching furiously, but really what they realise is that this is a moment you can't capture. This sort of desperate, I need this moment, I need to save this, or I need to come back here or something, but it's not possible. And that sort of feeling is quite universal, of maybe a moment passing and you can see it pass and know that you're powerless to stop it. There's maybe something in there as a scene. So you've decided it's not going to be animated now? Is that what we're
No, this is not animated. This is now people's. Yeah.
And I just want to. I think divorce is an interesting thing to tackle as well. Definitely through the eyes of something else. Because I just want to throw in that about a month ago with my fiance, I thought, okay, we've got a bunch of movies on Sky. Let's chuck something on. And I thought, I'm definitely in the mood for, you tick a lot of stuff off because it's too dark, and you go, right, I'm in the mood for something fun. And I thought, I don't know anything about Kramer versus Kramer except that I think it's a comedy, right? So that's all I had the knowledge of, and probably the title probably sort of because it sounds a little bit like a comedy. So I thought it would be some sort of slapstick, hokey, jokey, sort of like in a Home Alone but with divorce in it, you know?
Love it. Yeah.
And it was like 2.5 hours.
Be more wrong.
It's so depressing.
I haven't seen or even heard of this before, so.
Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep.
Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep being mighty. Although I recently read some things that, like, the scene shooting wasn't always that comfortable for the actors on the stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough subject matter, and also, I mean, I don't know really what happened between them, and I can imagine they're both quite hot-headed actors, weren't they? And sort of at the top of their game as well.
Sam, just to catch up, it's about their divorce. That's why it's Kramer versus Kramer.
And then and it's about how the child, the lawyers. It's how the child's caught in between, and also this is what I didn't expect to see in it. Is it deals a lot with mental health and a lot with sort of. And a lot with how the courts see men and women in relationships, and I don't think it's that dated either, really, bizarrely. But maybe I'm wrong, But yeah,
I did wonder with Kramer versus Kramer that it might be someone like suing himself. I was like, how? I'm sure the two people can have
that's when we do
surnames.
A series of Slash Dupe and we take real films and.
That'd be mine. Multiple personality disorder.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Dan. Go on.
Thanks. Now that it's not an animation, and it's not an American chintzy movie, I'm not entirely sure who's going to play what. But it looks like we're going to need some really strong child actors. I'm happy for it to be set now, like we filmed now, but set back.
Yeah.
I recently watched the Upright on Sky with Tim Minchin, actually, Tim Minchin TV show, and the girl in that, I hated her because she played an annoying child, but because she played it so well, I hated her, and so I think she's sort of 21 or 25 or something like that, but she would be a fantastic cast as sort of as maybe one of the older children.
So in my mind, there's only two because it has to isolate them. So rather than it being a gang, because that gives them a group dynamic which allows them to get through that. It feels like it's an teenage girl and a younger boy.
Are we going English? Do we think we're going American?
It feels English now.
We've warped it, have we? Oh, Sam likes the American thing. What would you chuck out for American actors?
Well, I was only just realising that I think I probably know more American child actors than I do English which is weird. But then I suppose, actually, I've always been stunned at like quite a lot of... One thing I think America do really well is I feel like casting child actors. I feel like they've got a real, like... I guess it's a big country, but they have there's so many like child actors that have come, like Leo DiCaprio started as a child and all that stuff. Or there's the obvious one. It's being shot now, so it wouldn't be a good idea. But the girl from Juno,
Ellen Page.
What's her name? For the one from Ellen Page, could be. But again, if we're shooting now, she would.
Yeah.
She's obviously
I guess the thing is, maybe this is the time to find a new child actor.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
an unknown. Yeah,
Frears does worldwide sweep for new child actor. I can see it in the Daily Mail now. Yeah,
new child star.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't know if it's a good question actually.
Which then leaves the mum and the dad. I don't mind it being American or English. This is how I roll. But and we'll come with something wonderful at the end.
I can't stop loving Emily Mortimer. She's good for everything, and I just absolutely in love with her. She's fantastic.
You could, if you wanted to go really whimsical, you could cast like Stephen Fry as the dad. If you wanted to go really old English, maybe it could be English and American. Maybe the dad's.
I mean,
English
the thing is, he's got to have just come back from the war and be quite young.
Yeah, you're
right.
What I mean, because I would have said Hugh Grant or something, but that's like because he'd be interesting as an older actor. He's quite an interesting actor, but too old.
Who's the guy?
Ben Whishaw.
Yeah, Ben Wishaw's good.
Almost too good. He did play, but he played the.
Do you know what I mean?
Mary Poppins, wasn't he? He was like the sort of.
He was the dad. Mary Poppins. We want to differentiate from Poppins as much as possible, don't we?
What? Who's the guy from American Horror Story?
Oh yeah, he's a good choice. He's a fantastic choice. I can't remember his name. He played Quicksilver in the X-Men movies.
Oh yeah.
Not the other guy.
I know who
I'm not a fan of at all. But
he was great.
But yeah, the guy from Peter.
I know who you mean.
I want to say it's Peter.
In American Horror Story, he was the ghost, wasn't he? He was one of the ghosts.
Yeah.
Evan
Peters.
Second season.
Evan Peters.
Yeah. Oh, was that Evan Peters? Is that a spoiler?
It doesn't matter.
Oh well.
There are enough seasons of it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of Dylan McDermott actually.
Oh no, he's too old.
But he's too old, yeah.
But Evan Peters.
But, I mean, if he was coming back fresh from the war, that sort of, he's got that GI.
The thing is, I reckon Peters has the ability to sort of. He's American, so but I'm sure he could do a good English accent. But yeah, he has the ability to look harrowed and grizzled from the war whilst also being young. So I'm not saying he's harrowed and grizzled. He's a good actor.
What about if you wanted to get a bloody good actor doing it and have that war-torn performance? You could get, and I'm going to use this term, and I've never used this term before, but I'm going to use it because I can't remember his name. Sexy priest from Fleabag. Andrew something.
Scott.
Andrew Scott.
Right. Yeah.
He could play
intense,
this kind of very intense, clearly working through some problems. Or actually, as I said, Andrew Scott, I also thought Andrew Lincoln.
Yeah, also a good choice. Yeah. He does appear. I think he's quite youthful still, but maybe he's erring on the older side of. But maybe that's just because I watched him in Teachers.
That's true.
So long ago.
Yeah. That's it.
And of course, then the most important part is probably the auntie.
Can I just say, let's. Unless you've got an idea, Dan, I don't want to cut across you, but I want something that does not feel Poppins at all. I want to feel like you've just. Do you know what I mean?
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. So
I'm not sure who that would be.
It's not meant. It's meant to be anti-Poppins. Yeah. This really,
which would be the alternate title, by the way. And then auntie. There's a pun in there somewhere. That's the tagline. There's some sort of tagline that involves that.
Anti-Poppins. Love it.
But with an arrow underneath it, and then all of the letters sort of drawn in that make it spell auntie. You sort of have it like on the tagline written like in crayon.
Perfect.
So what kind of? I mean, if you weren't going for whimsical, magical auntie, what kind of person do you think she'd be?
Keeley Hawes.
She's good.
I don't know.
She's good.
Who's that? Can someone remind me?
Basically, every British
I
TV
cop drama.
Spooks. Yeah.
Oh, she was in The Bodyguard. She was the one that he was guarding in The Bodyguard.
Oh yes. Oh,
yeah,
I can't.
She's got that kind of austere, but I think she's got a softer side type thing.
So is she quite old, or is she like sort of
and I don't think these aunties would be quite old at that point.
No, I guess not.
Good point.
Because when you think about a magical auntie, you can't help but imagine like Nanny McPhee. I suppose because you said Nanny McPhee at the beginning, but
yeah. Or Rachel Weisz.
Oh, that's a good choice. Yeah, she has the gravitas. You see. Yeah, I actually love Keeley Hawes. She's fantastic. But yeah, you want someone with that sort of gravitas, and she can do American and British, so she's cast no matter where.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where we set it. It's fine. We're great.
I was thinking. I know this is a bizarre one, but I was thinking Gugu Mbatha Raw, if that's how you pronounce it. She's everybody furiously Google her, but she's fantastic. And listen, I think you either make a note of it or you don't make a note of the race, because I'm not sure it particularly even matters unless you're grounding it in a sort of serious historical context. But otherwise, you make the man or the woman a person of color, and you sort of, or she's a sort of an auntie that's sort of not blood related. I mean, I suppose that sort of just depends on how much realism you're putting into the movie, but. Yeah, I think she's a good choice. I think she's youthful enough, but she's got the sort of gravitas. I want something that sort of feels immediately, sort of from the ground up, different. I want to feel like when you watch the movie about the special auntie or the special nanny, like you almost immediately think of this. But
right, yeah,
you want something where the kids have known presumably quite a traumatic upbringing if it's the war, and also coupled with their parents going through a divorce, and then they almost want a slap in the face of a human to come in and go, wow, who is this person? Do you know what I mean? And that doesn't have to be in that sort of whimsical, magical way. It can be in that in like a, this is the second time I've said the word ballsy, but in that, do you know what I mean? Like that ballsy, it's just throwing spunky as well. Do you know what I mean?
Bolshy or like, some sort of
bolshy. And again, if it's set in that sort of era, that can be quite fun because they would never have seen that kind of thing before.
Yeah, and I'm imagining the music is kind of I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Alexandre Desplat. I don't know how it's
from the Harry Potter.
The Imitation Game as well, and Grand Budapest Hotel. Do you know what I mean? That kind of.
It's amazing that his name is as whimsical as his style of score. He's got the Wes Anderson name, doesn't he? Character name.
Yeah.
I want to say Despot or Desplat.
Yeah, I'm gonna. We could ask Maddie because she'd know better than I would. But he's got that. It's exactly right for this because it's both in the real world and slightly out of it when needs be. And he's got a really wide range of style because we haven't really talked about it, but they are going to jump into different time periods in time, even if it's only for a little bit of a little bit of the film. But if we're going to go back to Roman times, we want to enjoy a gladiator fight or to a chariot race probably rather than a gladiator fight for the children. Then I guess if they watch a gladiator fight, it's got that war thing going on anyway.
Parallels.
So if they're going to jump through time, then we want to be able to have a composer that can kind of wind that in or thread that through, if you pardon me.
Great idea.
Very nice. That was very subtly done. I didn't even see the pun until you said "pardon the pun." I was
how well? I just want to ask a final question. How well is it received, Dan? Do you think?
I think it is. I don't think it does very well in the cinemas because, despite it having a stellar cast and actually being a very good film, I just think it just goes under the radar. Do you know what I mean? There's too many other things. A superhero movie comes out the same weekend and it just sort of sits underneath. But then it comes out on like Amazon Prime and they pay a lot of money for it to get up the kids' ratings, and it happens to come out during an Easter holiday or something. And it gets picked up by like Mumsnet and everyone watches it, and suddenly from there it rolls, and it's got a lot of style in it, and it's actually a good film. And I think it becomes a second wave, which is not really a phrase I should be using right now, but a second wave of excitement for it. And I think it's well received afterwards, after an initial sort of failing at the cinema through no fault of its own.
So at this point, before we hear the Dupe's idea, let's find out why I'll be picking a winner today. At the end of the season, we have a short list of winning ideas, and they'll all duke it out for the number one spot. And as voted by you, the general public, our loyal fans, the overall winning idea will be made into a proper trailer for a movie or TV show, whatever it ends up being.
A trailer.
A trailer.
Not a proper trailer.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. I've written here... so it's all to play for, the embarrassment of your idea immortalised forever by us. So I think it's sort of, I've said this before, but if you win, I think you actually really lose. So don't really, so there's no sort of worries. I think we're all winners here.
These are all great t-shirts.
If I win and my Studio Ghibli idea it has to be made into a trailer, I think it's you guys that lose there. Because how the hell are you going to source a studio?
You just have to find an animator.
You're going to have to, or learn to be one real quick.
I think that leads us into our dupe. So Ryan, what's your idea that you've come up with whilst you've been at the table for a Stitch in Time?
So thank you, Sean. So I had a couple of ideas that I've written down. I'm thinking, the phrase itself is "a stitch in time saves 9." So maybe some kind of like Die Hard 3, you know, like got to run around and save 9 people, that sort of thing. And then also thought about there's an English phrase of getting stitched up, maybe some kind of like kids like bully, a sort of revenge thing, something like that. And then also I also thought would be amazing would be the next Disney film, the next Lilo and Stitch film, A Stitch in Time, where he has to go back in time and sort of make sure all of the things happen.
And it's like a Lion King 1.5 or whatever it's called, where you sort of see events from the first film. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's that sort of the way that works. But obviously we had an animated film, you know, we had a wartime film, we had one that jumped in and around space and time, and I thought, you know what, I want to have something a bit different from that. So I've done the classic /Dupe thing of adapt the title slightly. So it's still called A Stitch in Time, but time is spelled Thyme, like
yes. like Rosemary and Thyme, the great detective series.
Absolutely. So what?
Showing your age there, by the way, Dan.
I've done that many times in this podcast.
So the way that I have this envisioned is there was that British film Startup where it used a lot of sort of slang as its marketing material. So a stitch is somebody who doesn't belong, right? They're someone that sort of is out of the fold. And the way that this would work,
in sort of prison vernacular, isn't it?
Yeah. But this is not prison.
I like that you both know that. It's just prison vernacular.
Yeah, I was nodding.
We expect to go to jail in our lifetime.
Don't question it, Dan. Yeah, don't question it, mate. Yeah, right. So the idea would be I would want it would have like a sort of a prologue of this film. The beginning of this film would be set at an American college, and a very prim and proper English girl goes there, and she meets the guy, she meets the jock, the Van Wilder, that sort of person. But they end up falling in love and everything like that. And when they graduate, they go back to her hometown in England, the hometown of time. So he is like the person, and it's very much like, daddy, this is my love of my life, and we're married now. There's an English series, Cuckoo, which used Taylor Lautner, and then later on used Andy Samberg, or I think it was the other way around. So it's that sort of idea, and you just have so much like ridiculous japes that happen. You know, he is like he meets everybody in the small town because everybody knows each other, and all the dumb stuff that goes on. You know, you have that very interesting scene where they all sit down at the dinner table and he's like eating with his hands or doesn't know the proper etiquette.
Because we all know Americans are just foul beings. No, I'm joking.
That's like half the listener base just gone.
Absolutely.
No, but what's fascinating about this idea, just quickly, is that normally you see it the other way around, right? You see like sort of a fish out of water going to an American place, quite often, like an English person at an American college, or something like that. So it's quite cool to see it the other way around, like quite a famous American actor, like a Zac Efron type. Say type, and then coming to England, and
you've got so many jokes that you can have. You have obviously it's the whole thing about the father and the son not getting on. This guy not getting on because maybe he doesn't think he's good enough for my little girl and everything like that. But then also I think in all these little towns, you have a lot of English shows that have it. I'm not saying that they have a dark sort of undertale, but you go and ask your grandparents about stories about stuff. We ask our grandparents how they used to like hold crazy parties where they used to buy moonshine in India from like during Prohibition and stuff like that. And you think like you've done it all, and you speak to them and they've done 10 times more things than you've done. So it's that sort of, even though this is an English prim and proper town, matey boy who lives up the road brews his own moonshine, in the back, and all this sort of stuff. This person was an actress, was that? Yeah. So he starts to bring out all of this, I guess, this oppression that's in the town. So the stitch unravels everything else that's sort of underneath that's going on, and you have a sort of he begins to become part of the life. I think a great scene would be they go out hunting, and he's just like, they go out hunting, and maybe the father falls off his horse or whatever, he's about to get gored by a big old warthog, and then matey boy kills him because he's an American, he shoots guns, he knows what he's doing, he sort of saves his life. Not that he owes him that, but you can begin to actually understand that he is right for his daughter, not because this is what father wanted, but this is what the daughter wanted.
Simply sometimes having other around, having something different around is what everybody needs sometimes, and that's something that England could probably do with learning post-Brexit, or at least some sort of acknowledging that other is possibly sort of the thing that actually makes you strong, you know, particularly if you're thinking of another tangent for me, but you're thinking genetically. They say that we're attracted to those with a sort of opposing set of genes, but in terms of making you stronger in terms of your immune system. So someone who has an opposing immune system and you're, you know, via pheromones, you're supposed to be more attracted to them. So we are genetically sort of predisposed to attach ourselves to other in a sort of very sort of primal way.
It's really like, I guess the moral of it is like, the you know, the stranger is your friend type thing. Do you know what I mean? Like and I think there's a lot of fun to be had in the colloquialisms between American and English.
You've got to have the whole, like she just walks around with no pants on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That kind of...
And I feel like
people... Get I love it when she doesn't wear any pants. And you're like, why would you say that to my dad?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
But I think she sort of... I don't want her to be an airhead about it. I think that it would be the fact that there's something that she sees in him that the father doesn't see, because, you know, whenever we go and meet the parents, we do put on a little bit of a persona, you know, because you're very rarely going to be the 100% that you are at home. You don't, for example, you don't go and see someone's parents in your pajama bottoms like you would be sitting at home with your partner. So, you know, you do have to put up a little bit of a facade. I see, Dan, you're...
I only like olives now because I had to impress a girlfriend's mother once.
Yeah.
So I never liked olives. I went round and the starter was and I kid you not, a bowl of olives as big as my face.
Dan's got a big face.
The bowl was as big as your face, or the olives were as big as your face?
No, the bowl was as big as my face, but there were a lot of olives in there, and I was like, I cannot. Like, this is the first time, and she's a lovely woman, but I was quite scared of her initially, and so I forced my way through 25 olives, and I reckon by about the 13th, 14th one, I was really into it, and I love olives now. So actually, it was a good thing.
With respect to her, though, I mean, who serves olives as a starter? I get it. As a side, or as a table food.
Make it into a tapenade. I get that, but anyway,
just a big bowl of olives.
It's like a deconstructed bowl of olives.
She was testing you, Dan, and you passed.
I passed the test.
I don't understand.
I would do anything.
Acquired tastes, like, to begin with. I feel like that's just such a weird, like, phenomenon. What you don't like something, so you eat it till you do. It's just such a weird thing. Like,
I mean, funnily enough,
I did that with porridge, man. I hated porridge, and then I just ate it every day because everyone told me it was healthy, and now I love it.
But that's sort of what this film is, right? The father is like that.
He's the bowl of olives.
No,
the olives.
Who's the bowl of olives?
He's eating the olives.
He's eating
the
olives.
American
The olives
is the olives.
Play.
But the thing is, the bowl of olives is like the father, right? Like, he doesn't like this guy because he's not what he's normally used to. He's not the prim and proper English man that she wanted her partner to do. But the woman, she loves olives, didn't she?
What's he a bowl of?
He's a bowl of eagle, because America. Well, the father's dry crackers.
The father's dry crackers.
Yeah.
And he's the bowl of olives.
Right.
There's your tagline right there.
There's your tagline.
And she's like a pickled herring or something.
We've gone off on a tangent, and if this still makes it into the final edit, I'm well impressed.
It's your fault if it does.
So many, as you said, Sean, so many colloquialisms, the way that people talk, you know, and sort of the differences in American. Although the really annoying thing is, so in terms of actors, what I've written down John Mulaney, but I don't think he's zany enough. I don't think because he's quite a subdued person.
He'd be good as like the older brother or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, of course, because you're thinking about the gentleman coming over from America.
Yeah.
He's too old.
I also think he's not got the sort of right, like, you know, he wouldn't be the gun-toting sort of like Van Wilder type.
Yeah.
So that also led me. So I would have to maybe change it. So maybe she doesn't go to school in America. She goes to Canada. But Jay Baruchel would be a sort of a little bit awkward,
really
but he can be sort of a bit wild when he's in the right sort of groups of people.
Because you don't want like a sort of stereotypical jock. Although there are a lot of good American films coming out now that sort of eschew the jock stereotypes. You've got Neighbours and other sorts of things like that, and a few, mostly with Zac Efron in it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
A good example of, I think, maybe the sort of vibe, because I was so confused initially when I watched Sex Education on Netflix, where you had this obviously British cast and a good one, I thought. And I was like, why is it so American?
Yeah.
I was like, initially, I was quite repulsed by that. Not in a bad, but do you know what I mean? The melding of the two things. Like if I'm watching in a film that's set in an American, you know, if I want the 10 Things I Hate About You, I'll watch that and then I'll watch an English thing. And so I was a bit, why have they done that? But actually I see why, because you do get that really nice melding of two cultures so that either culture can watch it and get something out of it, but also learn about, it's not like we're wildly different cultures, but you know what I mean? Like, Americans can watch it and go, oh, I love the British stuff about this. And the British can go, wow, I love the American kind of setting of it. Do you know what I mean?
Also Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson. I remember you selling that to me, DC, before I watched it, because you fancied her from, what was it?
Oh, X-Files.
X-Files. Yeah.
Jeez. Still do, by the way. She's amazing.
Yes, she's Hannibal. She was absolutely amazing in Hannibal. No one can upstage Mads Mikkelsen except for Gillian Anderson. That's the only way to do it.
She's great. She was great in that as well.
So yeah, I think that the sort of, in terms of playing the father, I've got Chris Barry as playing the father from.
Gosh, wow!
I'm literally
Chris Barry
all
from
of these
Red
Dwarf. From Red Dwarf. Yeah,
good choice.
Because he could sort of play. He would play that sort of a little bit stuck up, but you know, have the sort of character acting of when he falls off the horse.
Yeah,
and he's still likable. You know, he's not the sort of person who would be like, you know, you're not good enough for my daughter. Like. He is, you know, and
more of an English passive-aggressive sort of. You're not
absolutely, and it would definitely be the wife who, you know, they getting to bed, and she's like, oh, I don't know what she sees in him, and she says something like, "Would you remember you used to wrangle the horses for me, or something, or whatever?" You know, like. Yeah. He sort of understands that maybe you got to give somebody a bit of a shot, but then the next morning he's walking around naked because that's how he does it in his family or whatever, and then that sort of instantly turns the screw back round on him that he's not happy with him.
Well, I think also what just to jump in, I think what he can do, the younger gentleman, to sort of show the father that he cares. First of all, I think, you know, my fiance's dad, I didn't ask his permission because I think it's a bit old-fashioned, but I just asked for his blessing because I would have said, you know, I would have asked my then girlfriend to marry me anyway if he had said no, but it would have been nice to get his blessing. And he said to me, well, I didn't care about getting, you know, Junko's his wife. I didn't care about getting her parents' blessing. You know, it was between the two of us, and I loved her and she loved me, and we're good for each other. And I thought, oh, that's quite sort of, I sort of like that. So I think that the Jay Baruchel character needs to be like, not arrogant. That's not with arrogance. He said that, and it's not. You know, it's noticing your role.
It's truth.
Yeah, it's truth. So I think this Jay Baruchel needs to say, "Oh, hold on a minute. Like, not only do I love your daughter, but these are the reasons why I love her. Because I think parents can be blinded to some of the traits in their children."
Do you know what? I've just thought of something absolutely amazing. I think maybe one of the reasons he is visiting the family is because he wants to do that. He wants to try and maybe stick to that tradition of asking the father, right? And maybe they get into a heated conversation, and he's like, "Do you know the only reason I came to this stinking town is because I love your daughter so much, and I wanted to, you know, respect the traditions we have, and I wanted to ask you, but if you're going to act like this, that sort of thing." That'd be like, and that's maybe the final scene that turns the father
goes,
around.
"Oh, the fact that you cared about our traditions more than you cared about your own is a way for me to see." You know who you really
also,
are.
That's got to come because she's been let down. Like he's angry at the parents, not because they've been horrible to him, but because they've done something to the daughter. They've said something to the daughter that's upset her. Yeah. And then that's when he launches into the, I don't even know why I've come here. You don't treat me. I only came here to say. And they're like, oh my God, he stood up for her and he was going to do the tradition. This is great, lovely.
And that will be and that's sort of mostly what I have. Although I have got a sequel. Right, so maybe at the end, it would be something like he does ask her to marry. It's all fantastic, and then he's like, when do you want to do it? And he's like, well, you know, I already told my family, and they're already here. And like the comedy thing where a coach pulls up, and no one gets out on it, because then you have the sequel, Stitches in Time.
What, his entire family?
His entire family turns up, and definitely.
Please tell me his surname. His surname is like Chad Stitch.
Yeah, of course.
And we're fine, right?
So it's really turned into Stitches Time, as in Stitches and Time,
like it.
hasn't it?
Yeah, nice.
Which makes it sound like a corny, like, 80s cop drama more, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Stitches in Time, yeah.
I feel like Carrie Lewis would play his dad in the sequel as well.
I don't know who Carrie Lewis is.
From Princess Bride.
Oh, yes, he's perfect, isn't he?
I have a suggestion. I have a suggestion for the mum.
Yeah?
Claire Skinner.
Nice.
Yeah. Good choice.
I'm thinking.
Nice.
Like,
Good
you want to go when you're doing anything with like English and American, you want to have the English people being as bumbling and apologetic as possible, because I mean, I'm not an American, but maybe I think Americans seem to like that, or at least that's the image that they of British people.
I mean, you definitely,
which is a shame because I totally fit that stereotype. I wish I could be very smooth about it, but I'm really doing a great job of avoiding it.
So Jorma Taccone as director.
You
know, I know he's done a couple of things
of the Lonely Island.
But you know, he does a lot more sort of.
And some of his films, Hot Rod and whatnot.
So that's who I'd have as director. I think sort of this nice, fun, tongue-in-cheek, the idea of an American out of his place across the pond, but embraced and loved by all.
So it's at this time that I go back through the 3 fantastic ideas that we've had and refresh you on the ideas we've got, Dan, Sam and Ryan's ideas for A Stitch in Time. And then I normally give my pitch that I've put absolutely no previous thought into. But I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to do that, because this time we've had a sort of Tim Burton or a Studio Ghibli type animation. Good animation, which is the first. It deals with capitalism. It deals with free will. It deals with death, and it does so with also sort of dealing with time travel. And it's this fantastically sort of sad, but hopefully uplifting and hopeful yarn by Sam. We've had
nice, by the way.
You've made it sound better than I did in the whole pitch.
And then we had Dan's idea, a sort of British Kramer versus Kramer, but you take the divorce away, you replace it possibly with a looming or a post-war Britain. You give it this sort of vibe of maybe an Enid Blyton sort of classic, timeless feel. And you have just a dash of Mary Poppins in there, and you have the idea of these doilies or these small elements of stitching, being able to transport these children via their kooky aunt to another place and another time, and this sort of idea that maybe they could bring their parents together with this power, and the ramifications for that involving time travel as well. And then we had Ryan's Dupe idea, this sort of Mean Girls, 10 Things I Hate About You sort of toned film that starts maybe a little bit like a sort of English girl in college, but then it shifts dramatically to actually take him as the fish out of water and take him into Britain and have him meet this provincial sort of this family in a provincial small town, which eventually sort of blossoms into him being there is the catalyst for us, learning so much more about these people, and then by extension, he learns more about his fiance to be, and the family learn more about him, and the father understands to maybe let go a little bit. Maybe it's somebody else's chance to learn every facet of another person, which is a glorious, wonderful thing. But hopefully funnier than I've just made it sound.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I always skew towards the more dramatic.
With a few fart jokes in there.
With a few fart jokes in there. So I would normally discuss my idea here, and just as a formality in case we run under, basically, so we can chuck my idea in there, because I normally think it's terrible. But this is why I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to announce the winner at the same time as well. So I had an idea. It's interesting that you talked about Kirby and you talked about Yoshi and stuff, because I had an idea that initially A Stitch in Time would have been a video game, like a sort of Nintendo DS game or something by Level 5. They did sort of Dark Cloud Chronicle, Ni no Kuni, that sort of stuff. So they're a really, really great RPG developer. But I thought it would be a game initially that maybe it's sold tremendously on a console like the Nintendo DS, like a handheld console. And it's so fascinating you guys are talking about this, because I thought, okay, well then, who's the obvious choice to take this and make it into an animated film? Well, it's obviously Studio Ghibli, right? So that was my first thought. And I didn't want to say this earlier on because I didn't want to take away from the idea, but I could not believe how similar it was. And I just want to say as well, Sam, that I had Judi Dench as one of the voice actors in it as well. Like, it's just unbelievable.
That's so strange.
Of course you do, though, because she's mighty.
Yeah. She is mighty, and she should probably be in everything, let's be honest.
Absolutely. Contender.
But yeah, so I absolutely had a Studio Ghibli animated idea, and mine only deviated in that it was like a dark crystal-y type world, this other world, and an evil lord or an evil queen had taken the youngest line of a royal family, and they were the ninth in line for the throne. So the dual title was, to save 9. And it would involve going back in time, and they were hand-woven, a fantasy land of hand-woven creatures.
Amazing.
So I'm quite sort of amazed, and I would have had Sonoya Mizuno in it, who I love from. She was most recently in Devs doing an American accent.
Oh, who did she play in Devs?
She played the main character.
Oh, yeah.
She's the main character in Devs.
Yeah, okay.
But she was in Maniac. She was fantastic in Maniac, just like a complete oddball character. And she's got sort of a really beautiful, really unique voice. She was also in an Ex Machina, but she didn't speak in that.
So there's that film, isn't there, that's called 9, which literally just came to me as you said that. Do you know that film?
So I was desperately hoping I haven't seen it, but I was desperately hoping the pitch would be different to that. But if it's exactly the same,
no,
I'll take
no, it's pretty. I think 9 has very heavy post-apocalyptic. I think it's not an alternate world; it's a future world in which human souls are embedded in. So I think you're fine. I think they're like embedded in
good.
I think puppets or some kind of thing. I think I'm quite enjoying it, but no, it's nothing like that.
Yeah, it looks very dark, doesn't it? So I even had like a sort of modern sort of bumbling sort of northern working class. So I was really sort of edging but I love that my idea, I think, is the things that we have in common I love, but the idea is not as good as yours, not even remotely. And I was going to have Russell.
It's amazing though that
although we'll pop Russell Tovey in it, won't we?
Yeah.
We'll have to pop Russell Tovey in yours.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But so the reason why, and it's not that I like the gauntlet laid as a challenge, Sam, when you said there's no way that you can pick a winner that's animated, and you hamstrung yourself with it, because I had an idea as the ideas were forming, that if yours gets picked for the eventual winner, and I am going to tell you now that I'm picking it as the semi-finalist today.
Of course.
If it gets picked as an eventual winner, not only because it was similar to mine, and
that's the key.
I couldn't believe the parallels.
All you need to do is spy on the podcast owner, and then the ideas will come.
On the hosts.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing.
But I like the unique challenge of there are these things like pitch reels and other sorts of things that you can create a trailer by using animation and video and other things from other films. Wow. So if this ever becomes the final winner, and of course the finalist is picked by the listeners, but we would be able to edit your film using different forms, different animated films, and maybe perhaps some video game stuff and some other films, and we could make it feel like one sort of coherent film. So I think A Stitch in Time. I'm going to go with Sam. I'm going to go with your idea for A Stitch in Time. I love it, and genuinely, I love everybody's ideas, obviously, and they're all superb. But your idea was so genuinely fully formed. And so sort of something that you could see being made tomorrow. It's and genuinely something that sort of stirred something in me. I think. Do you know what I mean? Well, I thought, like, what a lovely.
Thank you. I know. I mean, to be honest, this is. I had to take my lack of knowledge with films in general and go with where I do know things, which is about making plot lines. And again, my biggest worry about coming on here was that I was going to be talking for too long about it. But no, I'm really glad. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to. What a great idea for a thing that people should do. Just pitching ideas to stuff. It's great.
Oh, thanks, Sam. But really, it wouldn't be anything without ideas like yours, man.
Thank you. Well, you know what? Hey, do you know what? My initial comment about not being able to do it because it was you know what? Maybe I was dreaming too small. You know, maybe I should have upped the budget even more. Maybe I'm going to have Tim Burton and Studio Ghibli. I'm going to pay them both to do a combination of both.
All right, easy now. That's something we can't replicate. But no, I mean, and let that also sort of be a sort of a point of note for anyone else that's listening to the podcast, because don't think that there's any criteria for winning, or don't think that your idea is too big or too small. Just give us the idea that speaks to you. And Sam, like, I felt it, man. It spoke to you. Yeah. It spoke to me. And it deals with some heady topics, man. And like the time travel aspect wasn't like it was for mine, just thrown in there. Like it really had some sort of relevance to the characters. It was really woven in.
Oh my God. I'm just going to listen to, anytime I'm feeling low, I'm just going to listen to this episode of the podcast.
That'll make one whole listener. Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. Your ideas were fantastic. I had a really genuinely great time, and it's really nice to connect with everyone during the lockdown and know that we can still be creative and we can still be social and we can still have a laugh and have fun as well, you know. And I just want to say to the audience, to anyone listening, like and subscribe, all the usual stuff. Sharing and commenting and particularly reviewing it will help us the most. And if you enjoyed it as well, and even if you want to be on it, it can't hurt to sort of promote it, just so that we're not just making it for ourselves, which we would do and we would continue doing, but we want to make sure that enough of you guys out there can hear it and hopefully would want to join us as well and be on it.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter and join the discussion on there. We've got a Facebook group as well where you can post what you think a Stitch in Time would be, and also if you've got any titles that you think would be good for us to do, throw them up there as well. You never know.
On the Reddit.
We might even be able to invite you along and have you a guest. Sam, you've got a fantastic musical Instagram account, haven't you? What's your handle for that?
I do. Yeah, it's I've been doing lots more covers during the lockdown. And the handle is on the Instagram, Sam Ohan Music. Yeah, come and follow me.
The boy plays a very mean guitar alongside.
Really good.
So everyone at home, check that out.
And also one last thing, in the description of each episode, I know that Sam, you sort of said, I don't know if I know these actors, I don't know these films. For you guys listening at home, in the description of every single episode we put up, there are IMDb lists of every film, every director, every musician that we reference.
Ryan personally hunts them down.
I do. I just have to sit there and I force them to be in this list.
Every time I go, I don't really know who that is, but I think they're in this film. Ryan finds out who they are.
I've got to figure out who they are. So I put them in, and they're in chronological order. So as you're listening to the episode, they will appear in each list in that order as well.
Just find them in the description block. So it just leads me now to thank Ryan.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. You guys rock.
Recorded in the Capo Studios 2020. What's up, Danger?